We are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Lloyd, we're here for part 5 of our series on Islam, the death of Muhammad, and women in Islam. Of course, I forgot to mute my YouTube page before it kicked off there. And let's see. Somebody's already being sarcastic in the notes there. So anyway, welcome. It looks like people are starting to jump on now. I hope we get a lot more coming in real fast here. So yeah, we've got a great show lined up today. And, I think I will go ahead and mention it, Lloyd. Lloyd and I were doing some research earlier today on the Talmud. And I think we're going to have a whole show worth just of material on that, and it's not going to be what most people suspect. There's the official version that's been going around since the 1890s. And then there's what we discovered today. Some of it's pretty amusing and interesting and rather humorous, but we'll probably be doing another installment or two on Judaism and the Talmud after we do after we complete our series on Islam, which we have one more episode to go. And I wanted to mention thanks everybody for joining on this feed. Not very many people on so far. That looks like they're just now coming on. We appreciate any support for the show. Since the main channel is shut down, please support the show from logosmedia.com up on the top of the website, and I'll post that. And also please support Lloyd. And Lloyd, you want to give out your email address again so people can PayPal you?
If I'd like to, thank you. Look, please support Jan. He's the one doing all the work and giving me the platform. My email is ldeyong_pl@outlook.com. If you'd like to send me some support, thank you.
Yeah, and please do, send him support. He had to flee South Africa, and he's living in Warsaw, Poland, and still, making his own businesses and making things work and doing this research for all of us. So, it's really helpful for everyone who supports the show. Thanks for the kind comment there, Kevin. He said, your work saved my life from the left-hand path. That's what this is all about, and that's what we are here to do. And, we're probably one of the last shows out there that is not left-hand path. And, it's startling when you realize what's going on out there. But, anyway, so let's get going. I was hoping more people would be on by now. I'm not sure where everybody is. It's 5:03 here, so everybody should be here. And Andrew says, same here. So good job to both of you for figuring things out. Thanks to Lloyd for all of his research. And let's just dive in so we don't go too far overboard.
Yeah, guys. So thank you all for those who are watching. A point I want to make before we begin. We have a fair amount to get through tonight. I know that I'm using citations. I'm using extensive citations. I'm mentioning books. I'm mentioning chapters, verses, and so on. You do need to go and check these for yourself. Don't assume that what you're being told is factual simply because you know the source or you think you know the person saying it. Check these facts for yourself. Make sure the context is correct. Make sure that the content is accurate. The notes are accurate. Check for yourself. Understand? Because as Jan alluded to earlier, I went through a series of notes that was provided by someone who purported to be an authority, quoting directly out of a source text. And I decided to go and check that source text in detail. And this was a book written about, as Jan was talking about, Judaism. I went and looked at every reference or some of the references they provided from the original source material from the Judaic books. And I would say my findings so far that 90% of those references, which are in common use and commonly found in public today, were false. 90%, I'd say. Would you agree with that, Jan? 90%?
Yeah, and this is one thing a lot of people will write me and ask me my opinion on things often. And I typically tell them, look, here's the answer, but don't trust people. If I was a jerk who wanted to mind control you or mislead you, I could easily give you the false information. But here's where you can find out the information. And, a lot of people are just so used to making that ad veracundium fallacy, the appeal to authority. And, so I'm trying to get people out of that mindset to trust their own five senses, to look things up, check the primaries. Don't believe, just because you read it in a book someplace. Let's say if you read it in a book, and using today as an example, and Dobro jutro, Ahmed Music in the chat there. But don't just follow what you think that book says. Check the book citation. So, today is a perfect example, and I'm going to give one humorous example. So there's this citation from the Talmud that everyone quotes that says essentially that in the Talmud, genteel women are considered jackasses, or, asses, essentially. And when you actually go through the citations, it's a debate, and this person is accusing this other person of this. And then when you go and look it up, it's actually a conversation about women sleeping with men who have donkey-sized phalluses. And so, it's a totally different, meaning when you actually go in and look things up for yourself. So, always check the citations. I've been telling people this for years. Use the trivium method. Verify things the best that you can. And, Beating Tracks out of Babylon is asking, what's the best way to find the primaries? Any websites you suggest? And we're going to be, throughout this series, we do provide the citations on screen and tell people where to find them. And, maybe we still haven't posted them to the show notes, have we? We keep saying we're going to do that.
I have people, look, everything that I've been doing has been shown on the screen. My notes all have extensive citations and references. I have A, spoken them. I have B, if anyone goes to the video, my screen is displayed with all my notes and references, right? So that is available. I have, on all of the YouTube videos, I've provided a link to at least one, a book on jihad, violent jihad, so that everyone can see for themselves what a learned scholar has to say about it, because it's a detailed, simple book on jihad. Two, I have provided a reference to the manual of Sharia that I use, the Umdat al-Salik. And but certainly, if anyone wants it, I can provide a list. I can provide links to download of the books. The subject that we were discussing, Judaism, that needs time to research, because all of these sources are now starting to be available online. The bulk of these resources are online, so we can provide those links. So what I can do is possibly in the next show, I can provide maybe a cheat sheet. Someone mentioned cheat sheets. I think I can prep a couple of cheat sheets, and for the next time, whenever that is, I can provide links to that. Also, once your Facebook is up, we can provide links to that. Because that was the plan, I think, to provide those on your Facebook, but that's not happening. Anyone can PM me, but I can certainly provide, because I want people to check the sources, see if I'm right. Don't believe me just because I say so. As I said, I went and looked at a book that was published, and the first three sources I checked were totally false. Because I went to look up the original sources, but these are, so you can get them online.
And you're in Warsaw, and after you went to bed, I checked 5 more, and 1 out of the 5 was correct.
Okay.
And marginally correct at that.
Okay, well then, we have a strike rate that's probably at this point less than, it's at best 90%. Yeah, so yeah, I think this will be an interesting one, a very controversial episode, but again, I need time to do the solid research, provide the citations. People can follow on the screen. They can see the links. They can see the website. They can see words to search. We can go through it in detail for that purpose. Don't take my word for it, because I've taken people's word for it and I've been duped. And, yeah, so today, guys, I want to chat about the death of Mohammed. as a brief introduction, just a brief section. Then I want to talk about women and sex with children. Again, something controversial, I think that it's worth talking about.
And let me just pause you here. Just a disclaimer here. This episode is going to be extremely politically incorrect. And we've been going through these primary citations for the last 4 shows. The last show was pretty disturbing, part 4, and this episode is not going to be much better.
Yeah, when we're tackling some of the controversial subjects, in this one, I'm using a reference that is actually very mild. It's written specifically to be neutral. And I will refer to my own notes, which are a little bit less politically correct language, I guess. But I wanted to provide some thorough insight into what Islam dictates with regards to women. And I think we've been finding that it is a very toxic set of ideas. Okay, so to recap on last week, crusades, cheat sheets, I can certainly do those. Once your Facebook is up, I can get to work on that.
That's going to be another 3 weeks on this ban. And it was a total setup why they banned me. So I would probably forget about that. Maybe we should just post them to the Logos Media website. Section. What's that?
Oh, the media web. Okay, fine. That I can do. The YouTube comment section is a terrible place to post anything.
Well, I can also put it in the show descriptions. Also, just put a link there,
okay.
and so that people can download them from my website. Maybe we can post a link for one set of notes, one set of notes for each episode, or something like that.
Yep, I can do that. Okay, so a couple of questions from the previous show. Hidden arms stashes. Someone said, look, yeah, sure, there's hidden arms stashes. If you go and you search for arms stashes found in mosques all over Europe, right? If you go and Google on that, you'll find that this has happened numerous times. UK, Europe, France, that arms stashes have been found in the mosques. That is a common thing. That is not a big surprise. So these hidden arms stashes for these cells that I spoke of, if the police had to go and do surprise raids and look in the basements and false floors in mosques, you'd probably find things, because it has been found. That has happened. What is the Islamic endgame? Polygonal asked about that. At the end of the day, they want to make the caliphate, right? They want to impose Sharia on everyone. Everyone has to be Muslim. Now, one thing to note is that when you look at South Africa, the political war in South Africa in the 80s, right? That was based on a strategy called the People's War, which was created by Mao Zedong. Right? The ANC's top echelon were all trained in this. Our previous president was trained as a KGB counterintelligence agent in Moscow. The balance were trained in Warsaw Pact countries, like Mandela was trained in Warsaw, here in Warsaw when it was a communist country. The rest were trained in Vietnam. And the People's War involves a portion of violence, and the bulk of it is propaganda, very cleverly spun use of propaganda, which is words. The war of narratives, the war of stories. I would say check your story, check the words, think about what you say, right? Start to verify, because that story is very, very powerful. It's like a cognitive shortcut. So a topic comes up, bang, your brain thinks the sentence because it's been drummed into you over time, right? And you don't think anymore about the details. You simply just blurt out the words because that's what you know. Right. So ponder that, and the violence is really just to move the ball along a little bit. It's the minor portion of it. Most of the Islamic jihad is stealth jihad. I'd say 95% of it is really just infiltration. Again, Saudi Arabia spends 3 times on promoting Islam than the Soviet Union spent at the height of its power. 3 times by Saudi Arabia alone. Never mind Qatar, Pakistan, Bahrain, the UAE, all the other countries. Okay, that money's going somewhere, and it's not about bombs going off. It is about infiltration into schools, churches, universities, think tanks, media companies. That money's going somewhere, and it's having an effect. Okay. Oh, by the way, Salahuddin, the name, I did say last week, Salah, prayer, and then Uddin, the faith. So, but the name is basically taken to mean righteousness of the faith. Salahuddin, literally the righteousness of the faith. Right. And so those other meanings, those 2 words are correct, but when you put them together, that's the interpretation that's given, righteousness. And also, with regards to Kara Mustafa attacking Vienna, once he was done with Vienna, he was going to attack Rome. because remember, they wandered into Europe on a casual basis. They had no resistance going from Turkey into Europe, going through a number of countries, ending up at Vienna. And once they finished in Vienna, they were going to Rome. And he had stated he was going to stable his horses at the Vatican. Right. So Europe was going to fall. And if Jan Sobieski, the Polish king, had not smashed that army, all of Europe would be Islamicized today. Right. The stakes are high. The stakes are very high. Okay. Any questions or comments from you, Jan, or from the audience?
No, nothing in the chat so far.
Okay. So perhaps I can make a beginning then with the first section.
Sure. Let's dive in.
Okay, so I need to share my screen, I guess. So where's my share screen? Okay, down on the bottom. I'm going to share the main screen for a few minutes. Okay, everyone. I will try and move this out of the way so it's in a neutral position because it occasionally blocks my notes. Okay, so you can see my screen, Jan?
Yeah, let me move us out of the way here. That's probably the best spot down there.
Yeah, it often blocks the screen, I've noticed, so I'm referring to notes.
Yeah, all right. Well, I try to move it around, but I've got us down below, in that sort of empty section below women and sex with children.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm having, for some reason, this app is being confused by my double screen setup. I have no idea why. Okay, so women and sex with children in Islam. And okay, this section isn't dealing with statistics and Islamic deception, but I want to talk a little bit about women in Islam, but also I'm going to talk about the death of Muhammad. So let me get there first. Right. Now, I want you to think and contrast whether you're a believing person or not. And this is not a theological discussion. It's not really the intent of where I want to go with these discussions. While they do have theological ramifications, certainly. I'm going to talk about the death of Muhammad, not in heavy detail, but certainly to give you sufficient knowledge to start looking for yourself, and compare that with the death of Jesus. Compare that with his life and his death. Okay? So I also want to talk a little bit about the lies of Muhammad and what the significance of those lies are, right? And how that led to his death, and contrast this with the life and death of Jesus. Simply, even if you take this from an academic point of view, just from a logical point of view, just look to compare the two stories. I'm going to quote from Tabari, page 109, called Muhammad at Mecca, from volume 6 of his history. It's called the History of Tabari, right? Tabari is one of the I believe the first, if not the most famous. He is the first tafsir writer, and he wrote a number of books on the history of Muhammad and interpretation, and also books on the interpretation of the Quran. So this is called Satan Casts a False Revelation on the Messenger of God's Tongue. Okay, this is out of Tabari, right? So this is one of the most famous scholars in Islam. Satan casts a false revelation on the Messenger of God's tongue. Gabriel came to the messenger of God, Allah in this case, and said, Muhammad, what have you done? You have recited to the people that which I did not bring to you from God, and you have said that which was not said to you. Hold on, I am missing something that I need to get to. Okay, sorry, I'm going to move this over. I forgot. I need to show this. Let me start here. So we will be discussing, the bulk of this will be discussion on women. Can you see this, Jan?
Yes.
I'm going to enlarge that screen so everyone can see that. I will read this to you. This is from Ibn Ishaq, which is Muhammad's biography, his official Islamic biography. So this is the man who wrote his life, and it says, if you went home and found your husband's nose running with pus and blood, and you sucked it until it was cleaned, you still would not have fulfilled your husband's rights. And I have a quote there from the original, from the book. You can see it's pasted in the bottom. She said, by God, if you're the companion of God's apostle, you must know what rights a husband has over his wife. And he says, if you were to go back and find him with his nostrils running with pus and blood and sucked until you got rid of them, you would not have fulfilled your obligation. Right. Two slightly different translations, but they take from two different books. But any comments with regards to that, yeah?
No,
I mean, what would
no.
feminists have to say about that? You I mean, everyone can see this on the screen. You can check this yourself. I can even bring up the book listing if you'd like. But this is Ibn Ishaq, section 957. These are it's not the page number, it's from the commentary on the right. On the margins of the pages, you'll find these sections 957.
Wow. Now, is that
So,
how people actually used to do that? They would suck.
no, no, no. I don't
Okay.
believe they used to do that, but I will go into this. Okay, so let me actually bring that up. Let me actually bring this up. Um, this is that book. This is Ibn Ishaq, The Life of Muhammad. And it asks here, O companion of God's apostle, what rights has a husband over his wife? And he says, if you go back and find him, this was a question. So Muhammad sent Mu'ad to Yemen, okay? And his job was to proselytize and teach Islam to the Yemenis, right? And he was asked, what are the rights of a Muslim man over a Muslim wife? And he said this, and that's what he said. If you find him with his nostrils running with pus and blood, and you sucked it out, you would not have fulfilled your obligation to him. Men have almost absolute control over women in Islam. They are property. Okay. Now notice he says here, Mu'ad says, you sent me and ordered me that when I came to them, not to fight them for 3 days and to invite them to Islam. So don't fight them first, wait 3 days, invite them to Islam, wait 3 days, and if they accept it, stay with them and teach them the institutions of Islam. And if they did not, on the bottom left, if they did not surrender, I was to fight them. And they surrendered before you fought them. So I have your letter, which came with your messenger telling me that, they had surrendered before you fought them. There's no compulsion in religion except we will fight you and kill you if you don't accept Islam. I think that makes perfect sense. Any thoughts or comments on that?
No, I think it's clear.
I think that is pretty clear. Okay, so let me just go back to these notes.
I'm sure the women are the liberal feminists are rushing to bring more Islamists here so that they can suck the pus out of their husbands' noses.
Yeah, gross, man. Just thinking about that. So look, understand. So okay, we'll get to the end. Let me just go through here. So I want you to realize the basis where this is coming from, right? And I will step through. So as I said, Gabriel came to the messenger of God and said, Muhammad, what have you done? You have recited to the people that which I did not bring you from God, from Allah, and you have said that which was not said to you. In other words, he made up stuff and he told to the people. Then we have the Sira, the life of Muhammad, page 166. Gabriel came to the apostle and said, what have you done, Muhammad? You have read to these people something I did not bring you from Allah, and you have said what he did not say to you. The apostle was bitterly grieved. Now it goes on and he gets forgiven and so on as the story goes. But the reason I bring this up is very important. It relates to the death of Muhammad. Narrated Aisha, his wife, and Abdullah bin Abbas, when the last moment of the life of Allah's messenger came, he started putting his khamis on his face. I believe it's a cloth or something. And when he felt hot and short of breath, he took it off his face. It's a face covering like a veil or something. And he said, may Allah curse the Jews and Christians, for they built places of worship at the graves of their prophet. So some of his final words, if not his final words, he said, may Allah curse the Jews and the Christians, for they built places of worship at the graves of their prophet. Sahih Bukhari, volume 1, book 8, Hadith 427. So some of Muhammad's final words were to curse Jews and Christians. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that we apparently have defiled God by building places of worship near the graves of our prophets. But if we go have a look, there's a mosque, a large mosque built at the site of his grave. I mean, so if I go here and so which is very, very interesting because that violates the rule that he just made here. This is the green dome, and this is the grave of Muhammad, and there are people praying. You can see this thing, the green dome and the Prophet's mosque. Look how huge this complex is. It's massive. So, yeah. So we are cursed because we built places of worship at the grave
I
of our
think they call
prophets.
that hypocrisy.
Yes, correct. I mean, that is something that one needs to think about. Obviously they'll spin it in a million different ways, but the fact is they have places of worship built at the grave of their prophet. So now let's go back one. My bad. Okay, so in Quran 69, this app is not working correctly on my two screen setup. So in Quran 69, 44 to 46, Allah says, if Muhammad had made up about us false sayings, we would have seized him by the right hand, then we would have cut from him the aorta, which is this vein running through your neck, of course, right?
Okay, so and just reiterate that, if Muhammad had made up about us false sayings, we should have seized him by the right hand, then we would have cut from him the aorta. So that's the vessel running to the heart. So, keep that in mind as we go through these next passages, because Muhammad is going to state some startling things coming here.
Yeah. So in Tafsir Ibn Abbas, who's the most famous of the Tafsir writers, not the first one, but the most famous, he comments on that. And if he had invented, right, Allah says, and if he had invented and had Muhammad invented false sayings concerning us, lies against us, and attributed to us that which we did not say, and Gabriel just said, Muhammad, you made up stories and told people lies, we would assuredly have taken him and taken revenge against him, okay? And we assuredly had vehemently taken him and then severed his life artery, the life artery of Muhammad. Right. So Tafsir Ibn Abbas repeats this. Now, there are multiple sources. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just providing two sources, one from the Quran, so therefore you cannot say it's false, and one from Tafsir Ibn Abbas. Okay, so if Muhammad had lied about Allah, if Muhammad had made up false sayings from Allah and told them to people, Allah would sever his aorta. Then in Tafsir Jalalain, one of the three most famous of the tafsirs, and had he, the Prophet, fabricated lies against us by communicating from us that which we have not said, we would have exacted vengeance against him as punishment. We would assuredly have severed his life artery, the aorta of the heart. Okay, that's in Tafsir Jalalain. Now let's have a look. In Sahih Bukhari, a Jewess brought a poisoned cooked sheep for the Prophet, who ate from it. She was brought to the Prophet and was asked, shall we kill her? He said, no. Anas added, I continued to see the effect of the poison on the palate of the mouth of Allah's messenger. So Muhammad was killed by a Jew. Right, moving on. Sahih Bukhari 44:28. The Prophet, in his ailment of which he died, used to say, O Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar. In fact, they call it khubr when I was there. And at this time, I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison.
Dun, dun, dun. I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison. So this is quoting Muhammad. Now, going back what we just read, if he lied, he would surely have his aorta cut.
And those are the words of Allah, and these are the words of Muhammad. Now, you must understand what your Muslim friend, your friendly grocer, your colleague tells you is not Islamic. If it is not in these books, if it is not in the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sira, the Tafsir, or the Sharia, it is not Islam. In fact, we can narrow that down if we are forced to. If Allah says it, if Muhammad says it, it is Islamic. If they don't say it, it is not Islamic. If they don't say it anywhere, it doesn't exist. Allah is found in the Quran. The life of Muhammad is found in the Sunnah and the Sharia. Right? That's the Hadith, the Sira, which I'm quoting here, and the Sharia. So you don't have to listen to your friends. You can simply get it straight from the mouth of Allah and Muhammad. So Muslims talk, they love to create confusion, or there is often confusion that is created that says, well, Muhammad died this way, died that. Look, he says I was poisoned. Okay? A Jew killed me because he had slaughtered her family that day. They'd attacked her village. They'd slaughtered all the men. and he had given her to a friend of his as a wife, as a prize, as a sex slave, basically. And that man raped her that night. The next day or whatever, she cooked that meat for him and she poisoned it, and she was beheaded as punishment afterwards. Right? His friend who ate the meal with him died from the poison. But now they will tell you Muhammad died this way. He says he was poisoned. I'm taking his word for it, not some random internet Muslim, not some random colleague at work who might know nothing. Okay, let's go on. Sunan Abu Dawud, also considered Sahih, which is sound. 4449. Bishir said to the Prophet during the sickness of which he died, "What do you think about your illness, Apostle of Allah?" And he said, "I do not think about the illness of my son except the poisoned sheep of which he had eaten with you at Khubr, at Khaybar, as they say." The Prophet said, because that his son died, the Prophet said, "And I do not think about my illness except that this is the time when it cut off my aorta." Muhammad says it again. Let's go on. Ibn Ishaq, page 516, when the apostle had rested, okay, the wife of Salam, Mishkam, so he basically forcibly married off, prepared him a roast lamb, having first inquired what joint he preferred. She put a lot of poison in it and poisoned the whole lamb. She brought it and placed it before him. He chewed a morsel of it, but did not swallow. Bishr al-Bara bin Mar'ir, who was with him, took some of it, but he swallowed it. The apostle spat it out, saying, "This bone tells me that it is poisoned." Then he called for the woman and she confessed. And when he asked her what had induced her to do this, she answered, "You know what you have done to my people." I said to myself, "He's a king." Okay, blah, blah, blah. Bishop died from what he had eaten. Okay. So she was killed though. So again, poison. The messenger of God said during the illness from which he died, okay, Bishir, at this very moment, I feel my aorta being severed because of the food I ate with your son at Khaybar. His aorta is being severed. Now, I don't want to argue with Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, nor do I want to argue with Allah. And I trust this, that those two people, Allah and Muhammad, outrank random internet Muslim. Aisha said, when the Prophet became sick and his condition became serious, he requested his wives to allow him to be treated in my house, and they allowed him. He came out leaning on two men while his feet were dragging on the ground. He died suffering. Right? So this is not the most comprehensive treatment you'll find of this. It is simply just that, just to give an introduction to what this is. Okay, moving on. So final slide on this series, of this portion. Right and wrong, as we think of it in a moral sense, is not used within Islam. Instead, in Islam, the concept is what is permitted, in other words, halal, and what is forbidden, haram. There is no concept of right and wrong. If Muhammad did something, it is lawful and moral. If he didn't do it or didn't allow it, it is then haram. It is forbidden. That is, it's as simple as that. If Muhammad did it, if we can show someone in the text that Muhammad did it, if he raped a sex slave, then hey, it is legal and moral to do so. What is permitted is what Muhammad did, and Muhammad's example is found in the Sunnahs, the Hadith, the traditions, and the Sira, the biography of Muhammad. Any questions, Jan?
Well, it just breaks down to, rather than like in Christianity, truth is God, or God is truth, and then Satan is the father of all lies, and then moral relativism is vomit. In contrast, in Islam, you have halal. What Muhammad did is correct, and what he didn't do is incorrect. So it's not based on truth or morality as Christianity is. It's based specifically on, on what Muhammad deemed essentially.
Yeah, it's what he did or didn't do, and if he did it or said it, then it's that is what is allowed. So understand. So therefore, you cannot just rely on the Quran. The Quran is only Muhammad's only mentioned 4 times in the Quran. Jesus is mentioned 93 times. Right?
And it's from apocryphal and Gnostic texts more than
Correct.
Christian texts, and a lot and I've read a lot of the Gnostic texts, and a lot of them distort and are complicated sophistry, like what is it? The Book of Truth, I think, is one of them. That might not be one of the more confusing ones, and I haven't read it for a while. But a lot of these Gnostic texts, they were considered heresy because of their confusion regarding truth. Because of the tactics of sophistry used. And when you read through those, some of them, not all of them, but a lot of some of these texts, you can see why they were considered heretical, and it's not just because they wanted to suppress the Gnostics. It's because it's about truth. Logos is about truth and coming to truth. So anything that takes away from that is considered heretical.
Right. So I hope I've just for that opening section, which I thought would be interesting for those of you listening and watching later, that you can see there are concerns. Muhammad gave revelations from Satan. These are called the satanic verses, and they're still, he was instructed by Allah to remove them from the Quran. They are still there in chapter 52 of the Quran. Muhammad did not remove the satanic verses from the Quran. He left them in defiance of Allah's wishes. So that, I just thought you should know that. Just for relevance, the Quran is only 14% of the Islamic trilogy, which is the Hadith and the Sira, the life of Muhammad and his traditions. So the Quran is a very small book, and the bulk of the life of Muhammad is found in these two books. So 86% of the life of Muhammad, or of the Islamic content, is taken from those two collections. The Quran is a very tiny text. And in fact, 86% of Islam is about Muhammad. It is all about Muhammad almost. Okay. So just bear that in
how
mind.
do you base all of this on, this whole religion on Muhammad when Jesus is discussed so much more in the Quran?
Those are questions. Those are valid questions. In fact, it's something. Well, once you look into that and you get into that, it's actually very, very interesting. That Jesus creates miracles in the Quran. Muhammad does not do any miracles. Muhammad says, "I'm not going to do any miracles." He doesn't do any miracles. And Jesus, there are numerous stories of Jesus doing miracles in the Quran. Obviously taken from the infancy gospel of Thomas, but Jesus is of a virgin birth even in the Quran, and Muhammad is, so they follow a lot of the supposedly Christian traditions, but Jesus is clearly a lot more of a divine figure. But yet, at the end of the day, Jesus is inferior to Muhammad, and Muhammad is superior. Even in heaven, Jesus will be like in the second heaven, and Muhammad will be in the seventh. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, look, I didn't want to get into all that. That gets into some theological stuff, and I didn't really want to get into that.
Yeah, we'll just avoid that. Excuse me.
Besides, I'm not prepared for that discussion. But yeah, some of it is really fascinating once you get into it. But the death of Muhammad, it says a lot. Allah says, "I will take vengeance on you if you lie, and I will cut your aorta." Muhammad himself says, "My aorta has been cut." Right, and this woman took vengeance on him. She took vengeance on him for slaughtering her people, for killing her husband in front of her, and then raping, Muhammad, giving her to another man. So that looks like vengeance to me, So, okay, yeah. So that was the death of Muhammad, and he died cursing the Jews and the Christians. Okay, so Islam, women in Islam. Now I will go through these notes. I'll run through these, and then I will run through my own notes. Actually, let me have a look and see if there is. Okay, so some of the things we will cover is women, marriage, sex, beating the wife, Muhammad's wives, jealousy in Islam, Muhammad's family life, and sexual slavery. Okay, so we will go through some of those things. I don't want to do an in-depth treatment here, but I want to show you that these exist, and so that you can also go and do some of your own research. Then I will go through some of my own collected notes. This one tries to take a very clinical approach, so it's a little less inflammatory as I would typically be, but it's well worth going through. It's well ordered. So a woman's highest achievement in Islam is motherhood. That's the highest she can strive for. Hence, if you look at the Middle East, if you look at those countries, you've got the highest amount of oppression of women. You've got the least productivity from women, and also you have women are just seen there as a device to pop out babies. That's a very common refrain when you go to the Middle East. Okay, the only time where men and women are equal in Islam is on Judgment Day. They will be judged equally on Judgment Day. The veil and the clothing that they use, like the niqab, the hijab, and all those things, are compulsory. They are not optional. Muhammad's wives were all veiled. The whole point of Islam is to imitate Muhammad, to be like Muhammad, to copy Muhammad. It is not cultural. It is not optional. It is compulsory. In Iran, you can be arrested for not wearing a veil. You can be killed in places. There are places even, that you don't do that, you will suffer punishment. Okay, a woman's behavior during her menstrual cycle must be controlled by men because she's considered unclean. Most of the people in hell, according to Muhammad, are women. According to Muhammad, women are less intelligent than men. I don't know where the feminists are on this, but we'll get there. Women have half of the legal standing of a man. Their testimony is worth half that of a man. And not only that, they inherit less than a man.
Well, here in the
Those
United States, it's exactly the opposite. The women have all the rights and the men have none.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. What can I do about that? It is an insult to say that Allah has daughters, because having sons is a proud thing in Islam, but having daughters is a little frustrating. The old pagans used to kill their daughters, used to bury them under the sand, whereas, they wanted sons. And also, Islam forbids killing female children. Well, to a point. This is not 100% accurate in the sense that, this is accurate, but don't forget, honor killing is allowed in Islam. Right? Grandparents or parents are allowed to kill children who bring dishonor on the family. So a girl not wearing hijab, look at Canada, it's happening in Canada, Germany, America, that is allowed. Okay. So 9% of the Quran and about 12% of the Sira refers to females. Islam is a religion of men. The bulk of the doctrine is about men. Okay. However, the bulk of the doctrine is about men. However, there's sufficient within the doctrine to rule and govern the life of women. Okay. So if you're a mother, then you're considered. Now, they do say, there is a very interesting quote that people throw out often: paradise lies at the feet of the mother. What they will throw that out as which is one of the last few words in the sentence or the paragraph on that. That comes from Sunan an-Nisa, which is also a Hadith collection. And that refers to Ali, who wanted to go fight in jihad. And the only time you can get a reprieve from going to kill in jihad or die in jihad in the way of Allah to spread Islam is if you have a mother and a father and you're, let's say, the only son, and you need to go home and take care of them because they might not manage without you. So when they say paradise lies at the feet of the mother, Muhammad said that, but he also said, well, let's not go and slaughter the pagans and the Christians and the Jews. Stay at home with your parents, look after them. You will be deemed as righteous and also gain paradise for that. So it doesn't mean what we think it means. So note that, look that up. It's Sunan an-Nisa. I don't have the reference with me immediately, but that is where that comes from. Okay. So women will be rewarded by their actions, because basically your reward is based on your intent. Okay. But now you're rewarded by your actions. It's not grace that will save you. Paradise isn't from grace. Paradise is from following the rules to the letter. Right. So you command what is just and forbid what is evil. Right? You observe regular prayer, you contribute to charity, and you obey Allah and His Messenger. And His Messenger says, obey your husband. Right? So Allah is mighty and wise, and for both men and women, they will receive reward in paradise. So the veil. So we have the burqa, we have the purda, the hijab, that they're all methods of hiding and secluding women. It is deemed that women have to cover themselves so that they're seen and not molested. Okay, that is within the scriptures. They are seen and not molested, because it is deemed that men are not responsible for their actions if they molest women. Women have to hide themselves so that they do not.
And this is why rape is rampant in Europe when
Yes,
Islamists come up from Syria, etc.
because it's not the fault of a man if a woman is uncovered. It is not his fault. She was supposed to be covered up.
This goes again. It's so important when you follow natural law and truth versus lies in Christianity in juxtaposition to Islam. It's just such a stark contrast. And this is why we see, such rampant apostasy from Islam into Christianity when they realize what it's really about, and the stark contrast between the two. The issue
Yeah.
is in a lot of Islamic countries, they're not allowed to study Christianity and what it's really about. So, and there's that show, David Wood on YouTube, and he's, that's what his show is really dedicated to, is helping Islamists come across. That's kind of the main focus of his ministry.
Yeah, I think if there were more concerted effort to do Christian outreach within the Islamic countries where it was possible, there you would see a lot of conversion. For instance, I've seen credible reports in previously ISIS-held areas. Lots of Muslims are converting to Christianity because they've seen the atrocities that Islam causes when the Sharia is in full effect. Because ISIS was following the example of Muhammad to the letter. So Muhammad's wives were all veiled, right? In the following hadith, so the wives of the Prophet used to go to a large open place to answer the call of nature at night, right? Umar, who's one of the caliphs, used to say to the Prophet, let your wives be veiled, but Allah's apostle did not do so. So one night his tall wife, Umar, noticed her going to the loo, basically, and he says, I've recognized you. And he said, okay, so Umar, one of Muhammad's friends and his apostle, and who became a caliph, said that he desired that the women might be veiled. So after he spoke to Muhammad, Allah then bowed, basically submitted to Umar's wishes, and so Allah revealed the verses of veiling. Okay, so
you know what? Excuse me. Sorry, Ahmed. Ahmed Music is requesting, and I don't know,
yeah,
but he's requesting that we discuss the inbreeding in Islam. Are we going to be covering that in this episode?
no, but okay. I do have notes on that somewhere, but again, it wasn't part of the intention. But if you look at so cousin marriage is very, very common. First cousin marriage is very common. The two areas where this is most common is Southern Africa, right? That's the region I'm from, but don't accuse me of it because I'm not a tribal black person. We're talking about tribal blacks here. And two, the first, number one, is amongst the Arabs, simply due to the example of Muhammad. Now, inbreeding like this causes typically a two standard deviation, which is 25 to 30 point reduction in IQ. Right. So you're
So,
looking at
and then we're looking at what, it's generally across the Middle East about an 85 IQ. Is that correct?
75 to 85, correct. 75 to 85.
And then it dips down into 65 in Central Africa.
Correct. And it goes back to about 75 in Southern Africa. So yeah, it has a horrific effect on the population IQ. Now remember, you cannot sustain, in fact, you cannot build a modern technological society like we have in the West with an IQ of less than 95. You require 95 plus IQ to develop, because the two of the primary things that you cannot develop if your IQ is below 95 is the idea of planning, right? And basically management. So to keep all those, so one is to plan ahead, to think ahead, to plan forward and consider consequences and plan now. And the other one is to keep all those balls in the air, to keep on juggling all those balls, right? Those two things suffer and people become more oriented to their needs right now. So therefore they become simpler societies, right? To have a modern society requires forward planning and management. And those are the two things that the cognitive resources to do that doesn't exist within those societies, or
Okay.
can't.
So the apostate rebel lion would like us to say, the hours which await men in heaven, please discuss this. It's the ultimate. Or the Horus, H.
Okay, so the Houthis, yeah, the Houthis. Okay,
Houthis.
so
Sorry
yeah,
about
again,
my
yeah, I wasn't
pronunciation.
the things like that's more of a theological debate. It really is not relevant to me in that I'm talking about the issues that affect us as non-Muslims, as Kafirs. Okay, so I talk about that. So if Islam comes around, this is what your wife is going to be subjected to, or your daughter, right? Those are the things. Whether you go to the Jewish heaven and I don't know, you get free candy and ice cream, whether you go to the Christian heaven and you get a free car of your choice and you can drive as fast as you want and it never runs out of petrol, or whether you get little boys with dark eyes, or whether you get women that turn into virgins every 24 hours, that doesn't matter. Those are theological issues that really aren't relevant. Okay, but on that point, the Houris, the concept of the Islamic heaven comes out of Zoroastrianism. He took that straight out of the books of Zoroaster. And so basically you have women that they turn into virgins every morning. And you can have sex with them at night, and they basically retain their virginity. But also there are boys with soft faces and doe eyes that will serve you wine and feed you grapes. Make of that what you want.
Okay. Yeah, I keep forgetting we still have to go into that part of this conversation. My goodness. Yeah. Oh, boy, here we go.
But I said that's a theological discussion. I'm trying to stay away from theology. I'm trying to stick with politics.
Right. Well, yeah. And and I know we still have some of the other issues with children coming up here. So brace yourselves, folks.
Yeah. So look, I'm trying to stick to the facts. So menstruating women are unclean. Okay. A menstruating woman is unclean. Okay. So menstruation makes women unclean. There are Quran 2:222. They ask about women's menstrual cycles. Say they discomfort. Keep away from them during this time. So keep away from a menstruating woman, and do not come near them until they are clean again. Okay, but when they are clean, you may lie with them as Allah has commanded. So Allah loves those who turn to Him and seek cleanliness. But a woman can annul your prayers. A woman will make you unclean. So this is how women are seen in Islam. So that from the time that a girl has her menses, she then has to cover up. She's eligible for marriage, okay, and sex. And so this is an issue. So this is how women are viewed. Women are seen as unclean in Islam, and this is theological. This is for all time. This is very different to the Western concept. Okay, it is the nature of females that most of those in hell will be women. These are the references. Sahih Bukhari, book 1, chapter 4, Hadith 184, book 12, 712, 18, 154. There's about 20, 15, 20 references here, all taken from Bukhari, from the most authentic Hadith tradition. Right, so many of these are duplicated across a bunch of places. Okay, I saw paradise and it stretched my hand. I stretched my hands towards a bunch of fruit, and had I taken it, you'd have eaten it from as long as this world remains. I saw hellfire, and I've never seen such a terrible sight. And I saw that the majority of the inhabitants were women. Okay, I saw the hellfire, and the majority of the inhabitants were women.
Wait a second. Why was Muhammad in hell again?
This was a vision that he
had. I'm just, the irony of Muhammad saying what hell is like,
And then he replied, they are ungrateful to their husbands and to good deeds. He says women are ungrateful. Even if you are good to one of them all your life, whenever she sees some harshness from you, she will say, I've never seen any good from you. And then he sees a woman in hell being clawed by a cat. Okay, she'd imprisoned the cat. She'd neither fed it nor allowed it to seek its own food, and the cat starved, and she was being clawed as punishment in hell by the cat. Okay, so he does say the majority of the women in hell, well, the majority of the population of hell is women. So after offering a prayer, Muhammad said to the women, "O women, give alms. I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of hell were women. The majority of the dwellers of hell were women. Why is it so?" Allah's apostle, he replied, "You curse frequently and are ungrateful to your husbands. I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you." Right? Remember, this is eternal for all time. The women asked Allah's apostle, "What is deficient in our intelligence and religion?" He replied, "Is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man?" You need two women to equal the witness in court, in Islamic courts, of one man. They agreed this was so. He said, "This is the deficiency in her intelligence. Isn't it true that a woman can neither pray nor fast during her periods?" They replied, "This was so." He says, "This is the deficiency in her religion." So women can, A, they cannot be as righteous as men, and B, they are less intelligent than men, and C, their witness testimony is only worth half that of a man. So when you go into court as a woman and you want to accuse a man, your witness testimony is only worth half that of his. Any comments?
Well, that explains why the feminists are promoting Islam so, heavily lately. Sarcasm.
Yeah, I know. So a woman should not engage in optional fast without her husband's permission if he is at home. In other words, women have to seek permission from their husbands to engage in certain religious activities. So the husband controls that. That is not a free choice.
Now,
Women are.
let me just interject there. Rebel Lion says, not allowed to pray or enter the mosque either when menstruating.
Yeah, look, I'm not going through every last reference, but yes, that is true. That is correct. So I'm providing enough evidence for you guys to have a look and investigate for yourselves as well. Don't assume everything I say is correct. Don't assume that I'm right. And again, don't assume anyone's right. Look these up for yourself. Educate yourself, right? I could spin a narrative and only mention the negatives, but the reason I said that if Muhammad did it, it is therefore the rule for all time. If Muhammad did it or said it, it is valid for all time, for eternity. It can never be contradicted. That's why I mentioned that fact. If Muhammad did it once, it is therefore legal and moral for Muslims for all time. Okay? So Muhammad said, if at all there is a bad omen, it is in the horse, the woman, and the house. So women are an affliction. He said, I have not left any affliction after me more harmful to men than women. So women are an affliction to men. Women are a burden to men, he says. And also he says, women cannot help their flaws, so you have to be nice to them. He says, treat women nicely. She's created from a rib, and she's much like one. If you try to straighten a rib, it will break. So take care of the women.
So he takes that one passage from the Old Testament, and then, it's like when you get into Ephesians and Corinthians, it lays out exactly how you're supposed to treat women, and you're supposed to treat your wife like yourself, because no man would hate himself, so therefore he has to love his wife unto himself, right?
Right.
And so, this is, and many people who haven't read the Bible and the New Testament would be shocked of that. Wait, I thought, Christianity suppresses women, but, First Corinthians, or I think it's First Corinthians and Ephesians, they really lay out that whole history. And while you're talking, I'm going to see if I can find that to.
I need to pick up the pace here.
Yeah, sure. But I want to make a comparison before we're done here.
Sure, you get that. So a woman, a donkey, or a dog can nullify your prayers. So when a prayer is okay, Aisha said, "Do you make us women equal?" This is his favorite wife. She was the 9-year-old that he had sex with. Aisha said, "Do you make us women equal to dogs and donkeys?" Right? Because a prayer is annulled if the praying ones are passed by a dog, a donkey, or a woman. So if a man is praying and a dog, donkey, or woman walks past him, those prayers are annulled. Allah does not hear them. And Aisha says, are you making us equal to dogs and donkeys? So he used to pray. She used to slip out of bed until she stopped feeling guilty about it. He used to pray at the foot of the bed, and she would get out of bed and walk away until she... Okay, female leadership will lead to political failure. This also is in the Sharia, so it has become Islamic law for all time. A nation that makes a woman their ruler will never succeed. That is now officially in the Sharia. I read it in one of the previous chapters when I spoke about, in fact, the first episode we did, I actually brought that up and I showed the Sharia reference. Okay. So the longest verse in the Quran is about contract law. Okay. He was a businessman. So the general principle in Islamic law is that it takes 2 women to equal 1 man. Okay. Therefore, okay, call 2 men in to witness this. But if 2 men cannot be found, call 1 man and 2 women whom you see fit to be witnesses. Therefore, if either woman makes an error, the other can correct her. Okay, so you need 1 man or 2 women. Otherwise, so 2 men or 1 man and 2 women, because the women are deficient in intelligence, and therefore the one can correct the other. Right? And this has again become part of Islamic law. In this verse about estates, you have another application of the principle that a woman is half of a man. A male, now this is inheritance, a male should receive a share equal to that of 2 females. You die, your son gets double the inheritance of your daughter. And if there are more than 2 females, they should receive 2/3 of what the deceased has left. If there's only one female, she will inherit half. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the inheritance laws within Islam, like, and it goes on. I mean, there's more to it, but fine. If you look at the inheritance laws in Islam and you work out the average of the fractions, they don't add up to 100%. Right? If you have, depending on the family composition, you have like one son, two daughters, two sons, and a daughter. The inheritance goes up to 107% with one combination, and it's less than 90% in another. So depending on how you work out the maths. So basically what this tells us is Allah cannot do basic mathematics.
Let me just read some of these for stark contrast for those of you who think that, for the feminists who may listen to this and think that the Bible is so suppressive. So, and here's the most quote-unquote suppressive part. Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of his wife, as the Messiah is the head of the church. It is he who is the Savior of the body. Indeed, just as the church is submissive to the Messiah, so wives must be submissive to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives as the Messiah loved the church and gave himself for it, so that he might make it holy by cleansing it and washing it with water for the word, and might be present the church to himself in all its glory, without spot or wrinkle or anything of the kind, but holy, without fault. In the same way, husbands must love their wives as they love their own bodies. A man who loves his wife loves himself, for no one has ever hated his own body, but nourishes and tenderly cares for it, as the Messiah does the church. For we are parts of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. And there's a whole reason for that, but there's also a section where husbands have to submit unto their wives as well. And let me see. And then, let's see. And then Colossians, and that was Ephesians 5:25 forward. And then Colossians, husbands, love your wives, and do not be harsh with them. Peter, this is 1 Peter 3. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are the heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. And that, so this is a very, very stark contrast. But I just wanted to cover a few of those.
I think it's worth it. I mean, there's you have something you have an element of grace there, whereas here you have a rule for eternity that women are deficient.
Correct. And I'm going to see if I can find some of these others, because I think some of them are very important for
they're
people.
Worth contrasting. If you look at culturally, even they're very. So Quran 16:57, the Meccans considered daughters to be the angels of Allah. If they received news, okay, so now it says in Quran 16:57, if they received news that they have a daughter, their face darkens and they're filled with anguish, because they came a culture of wanting sons. Okay, they wish for sons, and they say that Allah has daughters. So, sorry, let me read the whole thing. Glory be to him. They wish for sons, and they say that Allah has daughters. The Meccans considered the angels to be daughters of Allah. So all of the angels are considered daughters. If they receive news, the Meccans, if they receive news that they have a daughter, their face darkens and they're filled with anguish. They hide from the people in shame. So daughters are an object of shame. Should they keep the child in shame or simply bury it? What an evil choice they make for themselves. Either bury the daughter alive or hide in shame that it's a daughter and not a son. So when they talk about Allah was a feminist and he gave women rights, yes, he gave them rights, like the rights to be beaten, the rights to not be allowed to leave the house, and various other things. So he gave them rights, but not very nice ones. Okay, and when it says he put women first, yeah, sure. If you want to look at it that way, as in he allowed them not to be buried when they were born, which they were before, but but then we'll go on and see how he treats them. So has your Lord honored you by giving you sons while he has taken for himself daughters? So in other words, if male sons are honored within an Arab culture, right, within Islamic culture, why would you insult Allah by saying that he has taken for himself daughters? Truly, you say a dreadful thing. So saying that Allah has daughters is actually an insult. Allah sees daughters as an insult. That again, culturally, what effect does that have long term? So Islam claims they've greatly improved women's rights. Okay, this is a very limited improvement. So you can see also the kind of cultural ideas that have been spread and legal ideas that have been spread about women within Islam. Now think about this. Muhammad married a woman called Khadija, his first wife. He was 25, she was 40. She was a wealthy woman. Her husband had died. She was a trader. She was a merchant. She was the wealthiest woman, as far as I know, in the city. And she married Muhammad. He worked for her. Now, she was an independent woman. She was wealthy. She ran her own business. She owned slaves. She owned property. She proposed marriage to Muhammad. Okay. She inherited 100% of the property from her family. She loaned money to others, and she was not hidden in a veil. This was before Muhammad. Then she died, and then Muhammad made up all these rules, and now we have the rules of women in Islam today. So he took away rules. They say that, yes, he gave women nonsense. He took away the rights of women. Yes, there was the idea in the culture that women were shamed, but here's another thing. Prior to Muhammad's time, men had up to 20 wives. So if they were burying and killing all the daughters, how did you have 20 wives in that culture? So one of the ways that Islam claims to have improved the status of women is to prevent the burying of daughters. Okay, so it does mention here the burying of one's little daughters alive. That certainly did happen. Okay, and he did forbid that. Okay, that was forbidden. Okay, so moving on. So those are just questions to think about. Muhammad's wife was an independent woman, wealthy, and 100% inheritance. Under Muhammad, she would now only get 50%. She wasn't worthy of more than that. She has no independence. She's the property of her husband. So a woman has many regulations as to whom she can marry. Now, a man can marry 4 wives. A woman, well, no such luck. The woman receives a dowry. The main element a woman brings to the marriage is sex, her vagina, very bluntly. A woman must have sex with the man whenever the man wants it. This is very implicit in Islam. Divorce is determined by the man. Well, you say talaq 3 times. You can now text her in Saudi Arabia. You say the word talaq, you send it 3 times, and done. And then there are rules around that as well. So marriage in Islam is not like in our civilization. Okay. So marriage is sometimes called half of a woman's religion. I believe it's called nikah. Okay. So when a Muslim reaches puberty, according to the tradition, he then should marry. But now let's look at this. Allah's apostle, should women be asked for their consent to their marriage? And he replied that they should give consent. But then she asks, a virgin, if asked, feels shy and keeps quiet. She says nothing. Muhammad then said, her silence is her consent.
Now, let me just do a comparison here again. This is from 1 Corinthians 7, 1 forward. And now concerning things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the man render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband, benevolence. Okay, key word. So whatever people accuse of Christianity, it proves it wrong right there. The wife hath not power over her own body. Okay, the feminists will quote this first passage, and then they're going to omit the next part. But the husband, and likewise the husband hath not his power over his own body, but the wife. Huh. Well, that's totally different. How come the wife has control over the husband's body and the husband has control over the wife's body? So, this is what the feminists always omit when they discuss Christianity. Yeah. Defraud, just a second. And this part is really good because, the Bible actually lays out, don't defraud each other of sex. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent for a time. So you have to consent to not, take care of each other. Right. That ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. So and then it says, but I speak by permission and not of commandment. So this is entirely different. You own each other's body. It's by permission. Show benevolence.
Right. Very different.
Very, very different.
So a Muslim woman may not marry a kafir. In other words, if she wants to marry a man, that man has to convert to Islam. You will not marry pagan women unless they accept the faith. A slave girl who believes is better than an idolatress, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's just move on. I need to get through. So he who can afford to marry should marry. It'll help him to refrain from looking at other women. But now we went through slavery, where sex slaves, unlimited sex slaves, are the right of men in Islam. Okay, he must save his private parts from committing illegal sexual relations. In other words, having sex with a woman outside of marriage is a crime in Islam, as I've mentioned before. Okay, now it says here, when you're married, okay, you are given the right to enjoy a woman's private parts. Now, if a husband, so Bukhari 454, 460, Muhammad said, if a husband calls his wife to bed for sex and she refuses and causes him to sleep in anger, the angels will curse her till morning.
Wow.
Okay. Now,
I do want to read a couple more passages in contrast here when you're done.
So let me do one more then, or a couple more. So when a man has sex with his wife from behind, their child will have squinty eyes. Okay, that's Jabir said that the Jews have an expression, right? When a man has sex with his wife from behind, their child will have squinty eyes. Now, this is one interpretation. There is another. I will get to that in a minute. Quran 2:2-3. Your women are your tilth. They are plowed fields. Go into your fields when you like. Now, some interpretations seem to say as you like. Okay, and that is not only because of that expression of, you know, if you have sex with a woman from behind, the child of squinty eyes. There's another tradition which talks about this guy wanted to have sex in, shall we say, an unconventional manner. And his wife said, I'm not having any of that. So he went to Muhammad and said, Muhammad, my wife doesn't want to submit to me because I want to do A, B, and C. And she said, no, she ain't having that. And Muhammad said, well, Allah just told me that your women are your plowed fields. Go as you want. You fill in the blanks there for yourself. So it is all. So Muhammad, okay, in Muslim, Sahih Muslim, Book 8, Hadith number 3365, it is all right for a man who wants to enter his wife from behind or from on top. But now he goes on here afterwards, but he should enter the vagina. So moving on. So this let's just say there's not always consistency, and there is certainly contradictions within these various traditions.
All right. Okay. Well, let's compare that to 1 Corinthians 13 through, I'll probably just go to 15 here. And the woman which hath a husband, and this is regarding belief, you know, and compare this, the stark contrast to Islam. And the woman which hath a husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now they are holy. Way, way, way different. But if the unbelieving depart, let them depart. In other words, if an apostate departs, let them. A brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. And then just 16, for what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband, or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? You know, so this gives a clear cause, you know, or clear statement that if the wife believes and the husband doesn't, the husband is sanctified by the wife and vice versa. If they don't believe, if they want to go, let them go. They're not in bondage. That's very different than the Quran, where their half is valued. You know, in Christianity, the husband owns the wife, the body of the wife owns the body of the husband. They're to treat each other with respect, with benevolence, etc. Of course, everything that is in the Bible is exactly contrary to what the feminists say about it. And then the feminists defend Islam, which actually has all of that suppressive stuff in it.
Yes. So look, I can't do every last thing out of the book, but I'll do two more things and then step to my notes so I can just go through some of that.
Sure. And
So
we didn't even get to some of that really dark stuff. I think we should
yeah, I'll
cover
get
some
to
of
some
that.
of that. That's what I'll get to. So
All
women
right.
have rights similar to those of men in regard to justice, but men are a degree above women. Right. So that is made again eternal. And also there's a thing called temporary marriage. Okay. It's called mutta that happens within Islam. So in other words, you go to the Philippines and you are feeling you're a Muslim man, but you want to get laid. Um, excuse my French. You can enter into a temporary marriage, a very temporary marriage, marry a girl, head off to your hotel room, come back, and the marriage is annulled. Never happened. Okay, that is something to look into. I don't want to go through every last page here. That there's a lot. So, okay, adultery is a capital offense, as you know. Okay, also female genital mutilation is also compulsory. Okay, circumcision is compulsory. The five practices are characteristic of the ancient prophets. Circumcision for women, and this is described within the Sharia. Okay,
So they
so
have to shave also there it showed. Wow.
yeah, no, certain things are compulsory. In fact, when a man has been away and he comes home, he shouldn't enter the house until his wife has shaved herself. So these are things. So homosexuality between women is treated as more seriously than that between men. And don't forget, this is punishable by death. Okay. So now I will go through my notes. I want to get into some of, okay. So the prophet said, and I'll go back to, a woman will not be asked, a man, sorry, the prophet said, a man will not be asked why he beat his wife. Sunan Abu Dawud, hadith number 2147, or book 11, hadith 2142. So a man will not be asked why he beat his wife. In the Sharia, section O, book 24, section O25.3 D, a people that leaves its leadership to a woman will never succeed. That's in the Sharia. Okay, so it is obligatory for a woman to cover herself. So let me go through some of the relevant portions here. So narrated Aisha. Now Aisha was Muhammad's wife. He married her at 6. He slept with her at 9. But prior to that, he used to thigh her. In other words, Muhammad would take his erect penis, and he would have sex with her between her thighs. He would rub it against her body, against her thighs, and not only that, apparently, according to the traditions, and I haven't looked into this, but I was told I need to double check that this involved oral sex. Now there are mentions that he used to ejaculate over her as a child.
And what's the youngest somebody in Islam can do this to a baby girl?
In Shia Islam, they make it fairly explicit. In fact, I will find that in Shia Islam, they make it fairly explicit. This could happen as young as a child, a baby child.
Like 3 months, a month?
Yes.
And
I
so
need to
they
get
could basically masturbate and rub themselves all over an infant
actually, hold
girl.
on. Let me, okay, so this section is called deriving sexual pleasure from infants. Now, this is explicit within Shia, within Shia Islam. Okay, but um, but here's the scholar that notes, if we condemn the Shiites for these hideously immoral laws, and it turns out that they are permissible in our faith as well, which is in Sunni Islam, then obviously they cannot be immoral since our religion allows them. Now notice, Shia Islam is Shiat Ali, the party of Ali, Muhammad's adopted son, who became the third caliph, and then they broke away to form the Shias. Sunni Islam means the Sunnah of Muhammad. They said that anyone can become the caliph as long as they follow the prophet, right? So notice, so these are some of the ayatollahs. I'll mention this to you here. In Tahrir al-Wasila, volume 2, page 343, issue number 12. This is issued by the ayatollahs, okay, in Iran, the highest, literally the highest, the Pope of Islam, basically, in Shia Islam. It is not permissible to have sexual intercourse with one's wife before she reaches 9 years of age, okay? But he says, be it nikah, permanent marriage, or mutta, temporary marriage. In other words, prostitution. As for all other pleasures, such as lustful touch, embracing, and thighing, i.e., rubbing your penis between the thighs, there is no problem, even if she is a suckling baby. Make of that what you will.
Yeah, and then imagine that old dude doing that to a baby.
Yes, correct, correct. I mean, I can go. Apparently I told him married a little girl. So, but make of that what you will. I mean, that's their writing. So hold on, let me go back to. Okay, so I need to get. Okay, let me go into this. So that is now narrated Aisha. Abu Bakr came towards me and struck me violently with his fist, and he said, "You have detained the people because of your necklace." I remained motionless unless I should wake Allah's messenger, although that hit was very painful. This is now sunnah for all time. Muhammad, this was so someone struck Muhammad's wife. Remember, she would have been between probably about 9 and 12 at this time, and that just happened. So he, the prophet, gave, so women have become emboldened towards their husbands. So he, the prophet, gave permission to beat them. Okay, so Umar came to the messenger of Allah and said, women have become emboldened towards their husbands. So the prophet gave permission to beat them. That again is sunnah. Allah, so Aisha says here, he struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. And then he said, this is Allah's apostle, Muhammad, he said, did you think that Allah and his apostle would deal unjustly with you? So in other words, he was upset with her, beats her, hits her. This is Hadith number 2127 in Sahih Muslim book 4. And he says, he calls this just, that hitting his young wife is just. Allah permits you to shut them in separate rooms and beat them. Now, he does modify it, apparently not severely, but we have to check the translations because often this is not found in the Arabic. It just says beat them. That's in Al-Tabari, volume 9, page 113. Then, narrated Abdullah bin blah blah, the Prophet said, none of you should flog his wife as he flogs a slave and then have sex with her in the last part of the day. Sahih Bukhari, volume 7, chapter 62.
And the social justice warriors think this is better than Christianity. Amazing. Yes. Absolutely yes. Delusional.
Now, in the Sharia, dealing with a rebellious wife. Now, this is now you're dealing with a wife from whom you fear rebellion. In other words, she might defy the man. This is not a woman who has, a woman from whom you fear she might. You may hit her. So, in other words, you may hit her, but it does say, but not in a way that injures her. Now, look, if you're a guy and you've been beaten up by your friends at school, you know, he may not bruise her, he may not break bones, wound her, or cause blood to flow, and he may not strike her face. You know, you can have one hell of a beating without someone hitting you in the face or making you bleed. Okay, a few good punches in the stomach, man, you're vomiting all over your feet. It goes on in the Sharia. So that's a section M10.11, dealing with a rebellious wife. Rebellion is not defined as a woman that acts like Spartacus and defies the Roman Empire. It just means she doesn't make you dinner at 5 when you wanted it at 5 and she was ready at 10 past 5. Understand? You can define that a lot of different ways. You may hit her whether she is rebellious only once. In other words, just didn't listen to me. I told her to do something. She didn't listen. You may hit her whether she's rebellious once. Although a weaker opinion holds, he may not hit her unless there is repeated rebelliousness. So the major opinion is hit her if she just gives you lip once, or you think she gave you lip, or you think she might give you lip.
Compare that, folks, to, treating your wife as your own body and vice versa, and honoring her and, whatnot. I mean, wow.
It is not lawful for a wife to leave the house except by the permission of her husband. This is section 2. So M10.11, section 2. Right. It is obligatory for a wife to obey her husband as is customary in allowing him full lawful sexual enjoyment of her person. In other words, she cannot say no. Okay. It is so, okay. So that is, again, it goes, if it is permissible for him to hit her, his hitting her may not be in a way that injures her. And it is the last recourse to save the family. You can strike your wife if you think it will save your marriage. In other words, the beatings will continue until the morale improves. You tell me how well that works. Okay. Again, Quran 4:34. This is the source of the permission to beat women, because it says you may beat them. If your wife doesn't want to have sex with you, for argument's sake, your wife doesn't listen to you, deny them sex, okay, and then admonish them. Don't sleep with them. Banish them to their rooms or whatever, and then beat them. Right. Notice Quran 38:44. and take in your hand a green branch and beat her with it, and do not break your oath. Now, this is the Allah apparently telling Job to beat his wife. So that's how they interpret, biblical stories. So take in your hand a green branch and beat your wife with it. Okay, 3359, veil, draw cloaks all over their bodies. This is actually, O Prophet, tell your wives and daughters and the women of the believers to bring down over themselves their outer garments. Now notice the word part is in brackets. That means it was inserted by the translators and doesn't exist in the original text. This is more suitable that they will be known, in other words, known to be followers of Islam and not be abused. So this is more suitable that they cover themselves, that they will be known to be submissive to Allah and not be abused. So in other words, if you're not covered and you're abused by a man, it is your fault. That is Quran 33:59. That is why you see all this rampant abuse in Europe today. Okay. So Bukhari 72:715. A woman came to Muhammad and begged him to stop her husband from beating her. The skin was bruised so badly that it is described as being greener than the green veil she was wearing. This is by Aisha. Muhammad did not admonish her, but ordered her to return to her husband and submit to his sexual desires. That is Sahih Bukhari 72:715. Okay, so that you can check that yourself. That's something you can refer to first. Sahih Bukhari 72:715. Sahih Bukhari 72. Okay. Aisha said, I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing women. That's Muhammad's wife, his little 9-year-old. Muhammad's own wife complained the Muslim women were abused worse than other women. Now, notice that often you will see people saying Aisha wasn't 9 years old. Now, this is an interesting point to raise. They say she wasn't 9, they say she was married at 18, but the book is wrong. Now, if the book is wrong, what else in the book is wrong? What else can we not believe? Now, they say she was 18 when Muhammad married her, so therefore she was of legal age. But because she was apparently a woman that was guilty of adultery and sleeping around and being pretty badly behaved, in embarrassment and shame, the authors of these books, the people who wrote Muhammad's biography and the traditions who wrote it down, tried to defend him from the shame by hiding the story of her shame and her adultery and making her younger, so therefore she could not be guilty of these crimes. So either she was someone who cheated on Muhammad and was abusive as a woman and pretty strong-headed, or B, he married a 9-year-old and he made it legal in Islam for all time to have sex with children. So you take your pick. Okay, but the thing is, the book makes numerous references to her age, so let's go. All married women are forbidden to you, except for those captives whom your right hand, your sword hand possesses. Surah 4:24, as we know. Your wives are as a tilth unto you, so approach your tilth when or how you will. Now, this is a different translation, obviously. Surah 2:223. So notice the different translation. Look at this now adds, you can approach your wife when or how you will. You decide what how means. Okay? So we know about that. So let's go. Prayers annulled by a dog, a donkey, or a woman if they pass in front of praying people. I said, you have made us women dogs. That's Muhammad's wife. You have made us women dogs. Okay? So Aisha, the most beloved of Muhammad's wives, said to Muslim women, O women folk, if you knew the rights that your husbands have over you, every one of you would wipe the dust from her husband's feet with her face. Okay, this is Sunan an-Nisa, page 311. Ibn al-Jawzi, Ahkam al-Nisa, whatever, page 311. Right? And so going on. So now I want to get to a waiting period is obligatory for a woman divorced after intercourse. If you have sex with a woman and then divorce her, you have to wait because you have to see if she's pregnant or not, and therefore you have responsibilities towards the woman with the baby, right? So now this is from the Sharia, section N 9.2. A waiting period is obligatory after intercourse, whether the husband and wife are prepubescent, have reached puberty, or one has and the other has not. And the husband must be at least 9.5 years old. So prepubescent, okay? If you've had sex with a prepubescent woman, you have to wait for 3 months to see if she is pregnant, whether she's prepubescent or whether she's reached puberty or not. Okay, there are other things, some other nasty things here, okay? So we've seen the hellfire, we've seen the flogging. The woman and the man guilty of fornication, flog each of them with 100 stripes, let no compassion move you in their case. That's the Quran 24:2. Fornication is guilty. You're guilty of a crime and you must be flogged with 100 stripes. Marry women who are loving and very prolific, for I shall outnumber the peoples by you. In other words, that's why you see the massive childbirth rates in Islam. Because you must marry women who will give lots of kids, because that's how we will have more children. Again, that's how Islam will grow beyond Christianity and other religions. Narrated Aisha, Sahih Bukhari, Book 6, Hadith 298. The Prophet and I used to take a bath from a single pot. During menses, he used to order me to put on a dress worn below the waist and used to fondle me. Okay. A guardian may not marry his prepubescent daughter to someone for less than the amount typically received as marriage payment by similar brides. So in other words, you can marry your prepubescent daughter, but you have to receive as much money as an adult. Nor marry his prepubescent son to a female.
Wait. Marry your prepubescent daughter? Your own daughter?
Yes.
What the frick?
Don't forget, Abu Bakr was Muhammad's friend, his closest companion, and the first of the caliphs. He married his 6-year-old girl, to Muhammad. That was Muhammad's friend. Muhammad put pressure on him to marry his daughter.
What about to themselves, like incest? Is that?
I don't know. I can't answer that. Okay. That I cannot answer. So let me go to the highlighted ones. Shush. Aisha said, hold on. My phone. Aisha said, the Prophet married her when she was, Bukhari, volume 7, book 62, number 64. I usually use Bukhari. It is the most reliable and authoritative, most respected version of the Hadith. Okay, narrated Aisha, the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years until his death. Okay, in Bukhari, book 58, number 234, book 7, book 62, and number 65, Aisha confirms betrothal at 6 and marriage consummation when she was 9. In Bukhari 8, book 73, number 151, I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriend also used to play with me. My girlfriends. When Allah's apostle entered my dwelling place, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me with dolls. 20-year-old girls don't play with dolls. The playing with the dolls and similar images is forbidden in Islam, but it was allowed for Aisha because she was a little girl and had not yet reached puberty. This is mentioned in the Fath al-Bari, page 143, volume 13. This is one of the Sharia manuals. I believe it's a Hanbali Sharia manual. I could be wrong, but it's one of the Sharia manuals for one of the 4 major schools of fiqh in Sunni Islam. Notes, Aisha took her dolls. Okay, so again, Hadith number 9, Tabari. Okay, Hadith, volume 9, 131. Aisha narrated, my mother came to me while I was being swung on a swing between 2 branches, and she took me down. Okay, my mother made me sit on Muhammad's lap. Then the men and women got up and left. The Prophet consummated his marriage with me in my house when I was 9. Okay, so the legitimacy of marrying prepubescent girls who have not yet had their monthly courses established in the Quran and the example. So in the Quran, such as your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, periods, for them that have the prescribed period, if you have any doubts, is 3 months. And for those who have no courses, who have no periods, it is the same. The waiting period is the same. This is a stipulation, a rule on divorce, right? So if you're divorced, it implies you were married. And if you have to wait to see if you're pregnant, it assumes you've had sex. And if you're prepubescent, it assumes you've had sex with a prepubescent girl. So Muhammad says to someone, why did you not marry a young girl who would have fondled you? Bukhari 59:32, because his friend said, did you marry a virgin or a matron? He says, a matron. He says, well, why didn't you marry a young girl? Allah's messenger married me when I was 6. This is Aisha again. And I was admitted to his house at the age of 9. Okay, this is Muslim 3309. So Muhammad did not condemn sex with children. He engaged in sex with children. And there's one last item on my final item that I want to talk about. So do you have any comments or questions so far, Jan?
Wow. Marrying and then having sex with girls, from 6 and then at 9, that's pretty well the definition of pedophilia right there.
Yeah. Now, I want to speak about something that's a little
I mean, they,
controversial.
they haven't even started their menstrual period yet at that age. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about little girls playing with dolls.
Yes. Yes. Now, there's even one hadith where he sees a little baby who's like a less than a year old or something, or less than 2 years old, crawling on the floor, and he says, if she was old enough, I would marry her. You know. So I want to mention one last thing, because I can't cover everything. I mean, shit, we'd be here for hours. So, um, remember I told you there was the one passage that was eaten by the sheep or the goat, the sheep,
Yeah.
right? And there's a reason that was lost. So I want to read. This is from Sunan Abu Dawud, um, 12:16. Okay, book 12, Hadith 16. The Prophet said, "Give him your breast feed." She gave him 5 breastfeeds. He then became like her foster son. Now, in
Keep
Islam,
talking. Somebody's at the door. Keep talking.
okay, so in Islam, where this comes from, and I'll do the rest in a minute. The idea was that a man is not allowed to be alone with a woman who is capable of having sex. This is unlawful in Islam. You cannot be alone in a house with a man that is an adult, and you're a woman that's capable of sexual age. This is a sin. It is also a crime. So they Muhammad came up with a rule that if a woman would breastfeed a man several times, then effectively that made that man her foster son, and therefore, as her son, this person was no threat to them, and they could then spend time alone together. So just to repeat, it's not lawful in Islam for a man to be alone with a woman in the house. If a man and a woman are of sexual age, and we know what those ages are, it is not lawful for that man to be alone with that girl, or for that girl to have a man, basically. It's actually not legal for that woman or girl to have a man of sexual age in the same house with her alone. And that person is not her family, a direct family, like a brother or a father. So he came up with a rule that the woman would breastfeed the man. The adult man would be breastfed, and therefore that made him the foster son. In other words, a woman would have a man breastfeed from her several times, multiple times, and after that, that effectively made it like this was her baby, her son. So the Prophet said, "Give him your breastfeed." She gave him 5 breastfeeds. He then became like her foster son. Aisha said, "May Allah be pleased with her. We used to ask the daughter of her sisters and the daughters of her brethren to give him breastfeed 5 times." So all the women had to breastfeed this man. Okay. So to breastfeed 5 times whom Aisha wanted to see and who wanted to visit her. So the women to breastfeed the guests, the men that were visiting Aisha. Though he might be of age, he then visited her. So in other words, even though they were of sexual age or sexual maturity age, they could then visit her because they'd been breastfed and therefore was an adopted son effect. But Salama and all the other wives of the Prophet, because means mother, Salama and all other wives of the Prophet refused to allow anyone to visit them on the basis of such breastfeeding unless one was given breastfeed during infancy. They told Aisha, "By Allah, we do not know whether that was a special concession granted by the Prophet to Salim exclusively." So Salim was allowed to breastfeed from all of these women if he wanted to visit Aisha. So basically, he went and did the dirty deed with all of these wives of Muhammad and everyone else. So they're wondering, and there's more. I mean, this is not every verse in the books.
Good grief. Wow. I mean, it's a total inversion when you realize it. It's everything that's the antithesis to truth, and it's all based on what Muhammad did. So if Muhammad was a pedophile, so be that's proper behavior. If he
Yes.
murdered, etc., that's proper
Yes.
behavior. It's not based on truth, right and wrong, truth and lies, right and wrong, etc. It's not based on meekness and righteous behavior. And this is what is spreading. I mean, you Christians out there in the audience, we have to do more missionary type work, more.
Muslims, when converted, become very pious people. They're very strong believers culturally, and it's worthwhile converting them because they become very strong Christians. But the thing is that they become outcasts.
Right.
So you need to give them a home to come to. You need to be welcome and bring them into a community that so that they know they can leave and be accepted.
Well, and in
Otherwise,
Europe where this is happening, they're kind of segregated away from their traditional culture. So, I mean, the Europeans could be doing a far better job at converting these people so that they're not a serious threat to the rest of society.
yes,
I mean, it doesn't take a lot of common sense here.
yeah.
You
Are there
know,
any comments in the comment section? Any questions that were relevant?
Rebel Lion is posting up some David Wood parodies and stuff that we can have, that people should check out. And I've just recently started checking out David Wood's
He's very
material.
good.
Yeah.
I don't. I like David Wood's work. He's fantastic. I don't like his debates. I must admit, I've watched a few. I didn't. I think he's not. I mean, my personal view, right? But I don't think he's a great debater because sometimes he comes across as weak or indecisive. But his video work is fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah, and I've started watching some of his broadcasts. I should start watching more of them, but it's like he talks to Islamists who hear about, actually hear Christianity through him and
Yeah,
in countries where they've never heard the Bible or here or wherever, and they're
he's great.
like, "Oh my God," and they convert, and
Yeah,
they and this one guy I was listening to, he was saying that every time he went to the mosque, he saw images of Jesus, you know,
wow,
and then he called up and was like, "What's going on here?" And they walked him through it, and by the end of the show, he was a Christian.
wow.
But it's people really need to reach out to Muslims and Islamists in general in different places and say, hey, this is, it's about peace and love and truth and not, you know, diddling kids and beating wives and killing non-believers and submission by force. And people like to say that, you know, they like to clump Judaism, Christianity, and Islam together, and we can see that
Islam does that. Judaism doesn't do that, and Christianity doesn't do that.
yeah, well, and atheists do it also. One of their common attacks is they'll see what Islamists do, and then they'll clump Christianity in with it, and they're so entirely different. I wouldn't even say they're juxtaposed. I mean, they're completely different. You have the offspring of Ishmael, who was the bastard son, and then you have this I don't even know what to call it. This creation of a religion that is the antithesis of everything that's in the Bible, essentially, especially in the New Testament.
Yeah,
And
it's
I just want to say, somebody just said Islam is for beta males. I just want to say that, in my opinion, when people start reading the Bible from the Old Testament first, that's why it gets confusing. You should always, in my opinion, start with the New Testament and then go to the Old Testament. You gain so much more clarity that way. And then the Old Testament makes more sense as well. And all of this doesn't seem, people get right into the Tanakh or the first 5 books of the Bible, and
Mosaic law.
they're
Jewish law.
absolutely baffled by it, And if
Yeah,
you just read the Gospels and the New Testament first, it will give you so much more clarity, and then go back and read the Old Testament,
yeah,
because the Old Testament is the Old Covenant, which is discarded, except for some of the things, and then the New Testament or the New Covenant is brought in. And you have to realize that this is a new covenant, how we're supposed to live now, and the first thing Jesus does is like sacrifice himself so that there's no further blood sacrifices. And this sort of thing. And that's, the Bible talks against blood sacrifices 19 times, but, that's why, the Satan worshipers and those who are caught up in the Old Testament, that's why they still do it. But, in these type of, sacrifices and whatnot, but the New Testament totally nullifies all of that stuff. So start there, get that it's about truth, and then go back and read the other stuff. And don't be afraid to read it. Don't be afraid to read the Quran. Don't be afraid to read any of the stuff. You know, if the Mormons knock on your door, read their stuff too. Don't be afraid of this stuff, you know?
A couple of answers. When people say, oh, but the Bible is just as bad. No, the simple answer to that is that the Old Testament is not Christianity. The New Testament is where we find Christianity.
Absolutely. People do not get that the Old Testament is not Christianity.
And B, the Old Testament is historical, it is descriptive, whereas the Quran is entirely commandments and it is prescriptive. Massive difference. And so that's how you would answer that question. Okay. And also, why are they comparing the Quran, which came 600 years after the death of Jesus, to the Old Testament, which is 3,000 years before him?
Right.
You know, why aren't they comparing Old and New Testament? You know, have them compare the New Testament. Ask, where in the New Testament, where in the example of Jesus, did Jesus murder 3,000 people by his own hand? Where did Jesus have sex slaves? Where did Jesus have a 6-year-old wife? Where did Jesus have slaves? Where did Jesus sell slaves? Where did Jesus have people assassinated? Where did Jesus have people tortured to death for gold?
Now, I was just going to say, somebody's saying that they disagree because the Old Testament, the Messiah fulfilled the Old Testament. The issue
also is
the issue is the confusion. You know, I'm not saying don't read it. The issue is understand what Christianity is on its own through the New Testament. And then if you read the Old Testament, go back through, then it all makes sense.
Remember, Jesus said also, a new commandment I bring unto you, love one another as I've loved you. Remember, the 2 prime commands of the 613 commands given in the Bible is love the Lord thy God with all thy heart. And the second one is to love thy neighbor as thyself. Right? So,
and love your wife as yourself, etc. You know, it's like, you know, come on, people. It's not, these aren't the same things. You know, it's so cut and dry. And, you know, the issue is so many people who haven't read these books think that they are the most educated about what they say.
Yep.
And, you know, forgive me for having that former co-host on here who liked to spread all of the disinformation. And people would tell me in the chat, he's disinfo. And boy, did I finally wake up to that. But
so look, I've provided references from the Quran, right? I've provided references from the Sharia. Right? I've provided references from the Sira, the life of Muhammad. I've provided references from the Hadith, which is the traditions and the sayings of Muhammad. And I've provided some references from Tafsir writers like Tabari and Ibn Abbas. So these are all 5 major books of the Bible, not the Bible, of Islam, all 5 major books. I've provided references from all of them. They're consistent. It's not like I've picked one verse out of the Quran. I've taken different topics, different subjects, and used all 5 of the books that are consistent. I know for a fact, if you come to me with 2 or 3 nice verses from the Quran, I know that the violent verses outnumber those nice verses by a minimum of 6 to 1. A minimum of 6 to 1. So by the time you run out of your 6 bullets, I have 30 to go.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, you know, and what I recommend people do is approach the New Testament understanding that it's about truth. When you see the word, it's about logos, which is truth, reason, logic, etc. When you see the right or righteousness, what is the right? It's associated with correct behavior. That's why something is right. You know, when someone's right, they're correct, etc. That's where these terms come from. That's why the left is associated with the left-hand path, Satanism, all of that stuff. And so when you approach it understanding that it's about truth, you know, and looking at it even through the eyes of the trivium method especially, it becomes, you know, one of the most beautiful, logically written books that you've ever, you know, that you could ever read. And, you know, most people are just so shocked by that. And I know Jan, who's, you know, listening right now, another Jan, not me, obviously, he read it recently. He was like, you know, he sent me a message. Oh my God, you're right. You know? Yeah. And
I mean, look at Psalm 23. Is it, what's it? I lift my eyes to the heavens, you know, and all that. There's some beautiful passages in the Bible.
Yeah.
When you do read the Quran, there's a lot of violence.
You know, and I should also point out that most Christians only take, or many, I should say, only take Psalms and Proverbs out of the Old Testament. And those, that's some really mind-blowing stuff in there too. But, read through it all and, understand it. But read the New Testament first, and then go back, and then suddenly everything starts making sense. And don't sit there thinking that you know more because you didn't study it, and everybody who studied it is stupid. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up.
My final comment is that people always say, "Oh, you're taking the Quran out of context." The answer to that is the Quran has no context. It literally, yeah, it doesn't. It has a lot of bare statements that just stand there without any context at all. The context is found in the Hadith, the Sira, the Tafsir, and the Sharia. So I have provided the other 4 sources that provide the context. So when you read the verse on beating women in the Quran and you go to the other 4 sources and they say the very same thing in detail, you have the context.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you give out your email again for those who want to support you?
Thank you. It's L De Jongh. That's LDEJONGH _PL@outlook.com. Thank you very much for the attention you guys have given me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Jan, thank you for the platform. Guys, please support Jan. I do appreciate the support. This is a lot of research and hours go into it, but please support Jan. He has given me a platform. I'm very grateful for that, and do support him for the work he does, because it's not just me that he supports. There's so many other causes he fights in. So, do be generous to him.
I really appreciate that. It's really appreciated. And some of the audience, I spoke to Pentagonal last night on the phone, and he was pretty clear about that too, and I really appreciate that, both of you guys and everybody else who's supported. So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. What are we going to be discussing next week?
Are we on next? Well, I need a break to actually do some research on the very controversial one, or these 2 controversial episodes.
Okay, and I want to do some more.
I need a few weeks to bone up on that, because it's going to be really controversial. It's going to really rock the boat.
Are we going to be discussing Islam, or are we going to? Is this the final for Islam?
So do you want to do an episode next week? I need to know, because I prefer to have some time to do some solid research.
Well, if we're wrapped up with the Islam episodes, we can wrap it up here.
There's one more Islam episode, which is Islam and Judaism. This, I think, is important. But
okay, but you need a break to do that one, correct?
Yeah, I need to get my facts together, because it's going to be very controversial, and I need to be very clear about my research and my notes.
All right. So, and there was a couple other people that wanted to come on, so I can follow up with them, and I
can take a few weeks, because I'm busy. I've got things to do now, and but I need time to really nail this one down. It's got to be rock solid. My references, my notes have to be accurate.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you back in a couple of weeks, and we'll see the audience back next week. Thanks for those of you who joined and found the backup channel here, and keep supporting the show. Much appreciated, and we'll see you then.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Good night.